Hello, Dr. Hills. My name is Rob Clapp, and on behalf of our Team 1 Concept crew, we welcome you to our team project presentation where we will be discussing wireless network. Team 1 members include Joseph Bueller, Anthony Knutson, Christopher Wiltz, and myself, Rob Clapp. During our presentation today, we will first present our team paper abstract to explain why we chose the topic of wireless security. Next, we introduce wireless networking before focusing on 4 wireless vulnerabilities to include wormhole attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks, black hole attacks, and jamming attacks. We then present our conclusion and discuss our reflections on this assignment. I will first discuss our abstract, introduction, and wormhole attacks. Next, Tony will talk about man-in-the-middle attacks, Chris will follow up with black hole attacks, and Joe will finish out our presentation by discussing jamming attacks and presenting our conclusion and reflections on this project. Our concept crew team decided to focus our research on wireless security. Because wireless security is such an expansive topic, we focused our research on wormhole, man-in-the-middle, black hole, and jamming attacks. But why choose wireless security at all? Since the introduction of wireless networking until now, there has always been a multitude of security concerns associated with wireless networking. Due to the mass adaptation of wireless networking today via both wireless base stations and via cellular data, coupled with the fact that wireless networking is accelerating at a rapid pace, this networked communication medium urgently requires security mechanisms to assure the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data traveling on radio waves through the air. In years past, network security was focused mainly on securing the wired network medium using firewalls, routers, and switches. Due to the vastly increasing independence on wireless communications we discussed earlier, it is imperative that security is focused on the wireless network medium. Much research has been conducted in the area of wireless network security, and our purpose in completing our team project is to survey 4 common wireless attacks and propose mitigation techniques. Before discussing wireless security, we must define what wireless security is. For this presentation, we define wireless security as the prevention of unauthorized access or damage to computers via vulnerabilities associated with wireless networks. Once again, one final time, before we begin, our research and presentation focuses on the 4 wireless network attacks listed here. I now begin by covering wormhole attacks. As shown in this figure, a wormhole attack occurs when an attacker, or a pair of attackers to be more accurate, creates an out-of-bounds communication channel. This out-of-bounds communication channel is labeled as wormhole tunnel at the bottom of the diagram. An attacker records a packet, or individual bits from a packet, at one location in the network. We can say this location is the origin node at S9 in the diagram, and tunnels the packet to another location, the destination node at S2. The reason attackers must work in pairs is because the out-of-bounds channel, or the wormhole tunnel, requires 2 points to establish a tunnel. And specifically, in this case, these points are origin node S9 and destination node S2. So, why are wormhole attacks so dangerous? They pose serious security risks because any data recorded from the origin point S9 and sent to the destination point S2 is routed through a tunnel not monitored on the official network. The wormhole tunnel is where an attacker can sit and screen data at their leisure. Acting as a man in the middle, an attacker can do many things. Tony will be discussing man-in-the-middle attacks in greater detail in a few moments. One bad thing an attacker can do, sitting at a wormhole tunnel, acting as a man in the middle, is to totally stop traffic from reaching its destination. This results in all packets to the destination being dropped, as signified by the black X's in the diagram between node 0 and nodes 2, 5, and 6. This type of attack is called a black hole attack, and Chris will be discussing this attack in more detail later in this presentation. A variation of the black hole attack is the gray hole attack, where an attacker will allow specific data through the wormhole while blocking other targeted data. A very serious risk associated with wormhole attacks is that legitimate traffic on the network may be routed through the wormhole tunnel when network nodes choose the shortest number of hops from origin to destination. To illustrate this, let's look at the node S13 in this figure. If data were sent from node S13 to node 2, from the right of the diagram all the way over to the left of the diagram, the number of hops it takes from the origin node S13 to destination node S2 is 5 hops. Originating from S13, the data will need to travel to S9, then on to S8, further on to S6, S5, and finally to S2. This is 5 hops from origin to destination. If the out-of-bounds wormhole tunnel is chosen, there are only 2 hops from the source to the destination node. For this reason, all nodes on the right side of the network will choose the wormhole tunnel for faster delivery of data because this signifies a shorter number of hops, even though in reality the distance the data travels through the wormhole may actually be much farther than the distance the data would have traveled within the internal network. Another serious risk associated with wormholes is that the attacker does not need to know any encryption or decryption algorithms used on the internal network. The reason for this is because all data is tunneled from the origin to the destination, and they have been generated on the same internal network. Thus, all encryption is valid, and the attacker does not need to know the details of this encryption. So, now that we know the security risks associated with wormhole attacks, what can be done to mitigate these risks? The mitigation strategies shown on this slide have been researched extensively by others, and they are all designed to detect wormhole attacks and eliminate them from the wireless network. Researchers Yichun, Parig, and Johnson developed the concept of packet leashes to determine how far from the destination node data has traveled to identify that data that has been traversing a wormhole rather than the internal network. Temporal leashes and a specialized TIK protocol are other suggested methods to detect wormholes. This wormhole detection solution depends on rigid time synchronization requirements, precise signal strength determinations, and a TIK protocol dependent on GPS geographical data. A call for new wireless protocols by Kier and Cervenacci would require security to be built in at the point of wireless protocol design rather than being retrofitted and applied as an expensive band-aid after the design and deployment of protocols have already occurred. Directional antennas and GPS presented by Hugh and Evans would mitigate security risks by locating and positively identifying all valid nodes on the network so that no new nodes could be added by attackers to create wormholes on the wireless network itself. This proposed solution implies a dependency on GPS and antenna hardware and requires an investment in hardware that not all users could afford. Statistical analysis of multipath, or SAM, presented by Shaw and other researchers, allows data routes to be statistically computed so that data taking lengthy routes exceeding internal network routes, which would imply data sent through a wormhole, can be dropped. Argyroutis and O'Mahony advocate advancements in wireless protocols that could mitigate wormhole security risks by detecting wormhole nodes and eliminating them. This could involve node authentication. We believe that implementation of a certificate authority or a CA model, or even the creation of a token ring network when the wireless network is first created, provides the most effective means of ensuring that only authorized nodes are talking on the network. The research just presented can only go so far in detecting wormholes and dependencies on hardware, protocols yet to be developed, and signal strength measurements that are not dependable due to environmental factors do very little to guarantee the level of security needed to ensure that wormholes are detected and avoided. Using a token ring network established when the wireless network is created and only allowing pre-authenticated and validated nodes to share the token could go a long way in securing wireless networks. To ensure that only authorized nodes on a wireless network can receive and forward packets, there needs to be either token sharing or authentication for effective node verification. Having discussed wormhole attacks, their associated security risks, and presenting a few wormhole mitigation strategies, I now turn it over to Tony, who will be presenting on man-in-the-middle attacks.
Next, we'll look at a man-in-the-middle attack. These attacks are when an attacker is secretly relaying information between two parties who believe that they are actually communicating with one another. These attacks are extremely deadly because it allows the attacker to actually alter the communication that is going on between user A and user B without either person noting what's going on. So let's look at some different ways of how these can actually occur. The three major ways that we will see a man-in-the-middle of attack occurring are going to be over the browser extensions, a Java injection, or the dynamic library, or the browser helper, as it'll be called. Each one of these three are synonymous with man-in-the-middle attacks. The first of these man-in-the-middle attacks we'll look at is browser extensions. Browser extensions are exactly what they sound like. They are extensions to the browser in order to enhance the viewing experience for the user. Many of these that you'll see will be for email or for other searching tools and mechanisms. However, according to our research, 65% of the man-in-the-middle attacks that are being executed will be done through a browser extension. The reason why is through, for example, Google Store. You don't need to have those things signed by a certificate authority. They are self-signed. This allows for users to create their own products and put them out there for anyone to download. So if we were to look at something such as Gmail and misspelling it with a 1 instead of an L and having somebody download that, you could, in theory, have them tricked to believe that they would be downloading the Gmail. So the big question becomes, how do you stop these types of attacks from occurring? Firstly, it should be with proper policy. Showing people annually what they should be looking for and what they should not be doing with any device that would be connecting wirelessly, whether at home or inside of a business, are absolutely critical. Next, only downloading from first-party sources. For example, if somebody wanted to download anything from Google, such as Google Calendar, Google Drive, they should make sure that they're looking at something that is authorized by Google Incorporated. Lastly, routinely using antivirus software. Whether it be a laptop or a mobile device, antivirus software is out there and can be used to find these types of malware on the device before they can become a big issue.
So, what is a black hole attack, anyways? Well, simply put, this type of attack is when a router in a mobile ad hoc network is targeted, it is attacked, and is told to discard all the packets it receives instead of routing them. Moreover, the router will not send any receipts back to the sender, informing them of the dropped packets. Now that we have the definition, let's look into these black hole attacks a little more closely so we can better understand. Now, When a router on a network is attacked, one of the first steps that the malicious node takes is to obtain the target's routing table. Once this routing table is obtained, the malicious node then markets itself as the shortest path possible to the specific router, while also establishing a permanent connection with the routers adjacent to it and to that router. Now that there is a link established, the targeted router will then begin sending its data through the malicious router, believing that all of its packets are being forwarded unhindered. However, upon receiving these packets, the malicious router will then begin filtering the information and then destroying it. A simple illustration of this is shown here. We see the targeted network with 3 routers labeled R1 through R3. The malicious router, M1, advertises itself as being the best path to the rest of the network, shown as the cloud. After a connection is established, the router takes all the packets it receives and dumps them. This is reflected as the BH, or black hole, in this diagram. So, now that we know what black hole attacks are, we need to learn how to defend our networks against them. And how do we defend against such attacks? Well, through researching for this paper, we found that there are 2 methods that show successful defense against black hole attacks. These 2 methods were the Forced Routing Information Modification Model, otherwise known as FRIM, and also by adding a check number to the end of each packet on the network. What FRIM does is it's simple. It prevents black hole attacks by utilizing error correction while also processing the routing information. Basically, it ends up forcing the node to select the correct path while also securing transmission between the source and the destination. The other means to defend against these attacks is by adding a check number to the end of the line of communication. This would obfuscate the auditing packets while keeping them from being noticed by attackers. This way, the attacker cannot distinguish these packets from common data packets and wouldn't know to alter their behavior based on seeing such traffic. Thus, the network would be less likely to continue to forward information to the bogus node. The problem with this type of defense, though, is that it would require making each packet 128 bits in length, adding 16 bytes of data. Thus, network communications would be noticeably slowed down.
Next, we will discuss jamming attacks on wireless networks. Jamming attacks can use wireless signals that closely match a legitimate wireless signal to overwhelm a wireless network signal to render it unusable. Some more involved attacks can actually confuse the packets or frames of wireless networks, or even replace individual packets to make devices think they're processing packets from trusted sources. Looking at jamming attacks in a general sense, though, it is comparable to denial of service attacks on wired networks. The legitimate wireless signal can be overwhelmed to the point of failure in the most common form of wireless jamming attacks. Wireless jamming attacks have 3 purposes: for fun, for spying, and for attacking. Fun attacks aim to disable a wireless network. Consider a technically savvy teenager with a powerful antenna driving around looking for a company's wireless network, with only intentions of flooding the air with wireless signals. It's an annoyance at best, since there is no plan to steal data or ruin a network permanently. The teenager is just having their own kind of fun at the expense of network availability. Once the teenager in this example stops transmitting, the wireless network will resume without issue. Spying attacks aim to snoop on packets in the network by delaying packet transmission. If successful, this type of attack gives an attacker a type of read-only access to information being transmitted. The attacker delays the packets to give themselves more time to read the data before moving the packets along to the final destination. With attack jamming, packets are actually replaced with packets of the attacker's choosing. They are spoofed, so the end devices will process them as if they were from a trusted source. Jamming attacks have 3 common models: noise jamming, bit jamming, and frame jamming. Noise jamming occurs when the noise level is raised to the point where the actual signal level is lower than the noise level. By doing this, it becomes all but impossible for devices to detect the real signal from within the noise. Bit jamming occurs when an attacker can match the frequency and modulation scheme used by the targeted wireless network. This attack disrupts the pattern in the specific channel being used. Receiving devices have issues picking out the actual network signal from the disruption, causing severe network degrading. Frame jamming occurs when an attacker injects their own frames into a wireless signal. An interesting version of this type of attack occurs when an attacker uses a single frame to silence all of the devices on a network for a period of time. The injected frame is a long-duration frame, meaning it requests devices on the network stay silent for a length of time announced in the frame. Because all of the devices on the network are silent from this packet, or frame, the network is effectively jammed without the attacker actively pushing attack frames into the network. Jamming attacks can be one of two types, either proactive or reactive. Reactive jamming is sometimes referred to as smart jamming because of the sensing involved in this type of attack. Proactive jamming attacks wireless networks without any prior knowledge of the targeted network. This type of attack includes constant jamming, where the signal is always present in jamming. Random and periodic jamming can be referred to interchangeably. These attacks can occur for specific lengths of time, at certain times of the day, or any combination of both. Reactive jamming, unlike proactive jamming, has the ability to sense the wireless network and look for certain thresholds or characteristics that trigger the attack. This sensing ability is what gives these attacks the alternate name of smart jamming. One type of reactive jamming is deceptive jamming. With deceptive jamming, false frames are injected into a known channel to confuse the organization of the real frames. Brilliant jamming, as can be assumed from the name, requires large amounts of prior knowledge to accomplish. This type of attack aims to disrupt the pattern of frames using this large amount of prior knowledge of the network. Brilliant jamming can be focused to a single channel, leaving the entire signal untouched with the exception of that one channel. Frequency swept attacks can actually move between frequency channels at regular and even intervals. This attack takes prior knowledge of the frequency channels being used to be successful. Finally, we will discuss mitigation methods to avoid or recover from jamming attacks. 4 methods of mitigation include channel hopping, spatial retreat, hybrid approaches, and network restoration after a jamming attack. Channel hopping is a mitigation method that allows a wireless network to hop from one frequency channel to another to avoid the jamming attack. Devices will listen to other channels to see if they can detect where the other devices have hopped to, and then move to the channel to restore wireless communications. Spatial retreat is simply moving out of range of the jamming attack. This is not as simple with fixed devices such as workstations or servers, as it might be with portable devices such as laptops, tablets, or mobile phones. The devices will continue to monitor the wireless network and will resume communications when the attack is no longer detected. Hybrid mitigation methods can use any combination of mitigation techniques to further mitigate the risk associated with jamming attacks. Using multiple methods of mitigation is ultimately more effective in preventing loss of communications as a result of jamming. After a jamming attack has occurred, it is important to have a plan to restore network functionality. This restoration plan will vary depending on the type of jamming attack that occurs. Ultimately, the goal of any of these plans is to restore a wireless network to pre-attack functionality. In conclusion, our team finds that there are many areas of concern that need to be addressed before wireless networking can provide full confidentiality, integrity, and availability as compared to wired networks. The scope of this project limited us to a mere 4 areas that have the highest level of vulnerability. Dozens of other areas exist that could not be fully researched within the constraints of this project. Even with these blaring vulnerabilities, we do see great potential for the future use of wireless networking. Our team recommends further development of wireless security protocols that achieve more effective means of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These areas are ripe for further research and development to provide a more secure wireless networking experience. By addressing these areas and building upon our current level of security used on wireless networking, there is a potential to build a wireless network that is comparable to the security of its wired counterparts in enterprise networks. Reflecting on this team assignment, we are curious if this communication medium will ever meet the stringent security standards for government, military, corporate, and security-minded consumers. We understand that all of these consumers use wireless networking already, but have weighed the ever-present risks against potential gain. During our research, we uncovered many papers and articles describing the 4 vulnerabilities we covered. These 4 areas are only a small portion of the larger security picture, which is a sobering reminder that wireless security is a very large area to address. We also discovered that the 4 areas we covered were intertwined not only with each other, but with many other areas of wireless networking vulnerability. This linkage between vulnerabilities also has the potential to have a single fix that addresses several vulnerabilities at once.